Okay, so here we have another encounter with Gligoric.
With Gligoric, yes. That was during the Olympic Games in Havana in '66. And as you remember, I showed another game from Lugano in '68. It's the same variation, but a little bit different. We'll see the difference during our analysis.
Okay.
So, Zemish again. And starting from here, he wants to show that the main variation against Zemish is a good one. This was the initial game, and Lugano was the improvement a little bit later, 2 years later. So after e5, d5, knight h5, queen d2, f5, cusp, knight d7, everything is theory. So here, in our game in Lugano, I played immediately knight g2. Here I took in f5. It's a little bit different. And now bishop f5, in my opinion, is not a good move. It was better to play normal. To take with the pawn. And after knight g2 is very complicated, but in any variation, white is a little bit better. So after bishop f5 is different because now in many variations you try to take control of square e4. If you have control of e4, then white is clearly better, and finally you have an even a better game in all variations. Because you have, if we arrive there, later
With the
on,
knight.
yes, with the knight, in many variations you have a very strong knight in e4 against the weak bishop from g7. This is the strategical idea for white,
Yeah.
So white tries to do this, and black has to, to try to avoid all these variations, if possible, of course. And now after queen d7, everything is forced, because after move g4, everything is more or less forced. Now he took in f5, in d3, of course, and now he has to give a pawn. If not, he had to give a pawn in f4, but it's a little bit better for white, of course, So after knight takes e4, now we could take in h5, and now we win by force 2 or 3 pawns. Everything is forced. If he goes back now to f6,
Yes.
he loses without any trouble, the second pawn from g6 or more, because if he takes, we can even take with the queen, and we play later on rook g1, or we can play immediately rook g1, and after rook takes rook e8, knight f4 or knight d4, and we come to e6, and it's finished for black. The game is over. Yeah, and we go back with the queen, and here in this position he played knight c5. Okay, now we take in c5. He takes, and we take in g6. We have many pawns, but our pawns are a little bit weak. He can take back later on 2 or 3 pawns, and the game is still very unclear. Now, finally, he has a very active position. He gave many pawns, but he has very active positions for black. The bishop plays, the bishop from g7. The two rooks, they are very strong. They play, both of them, the e file and the f file. And you have to show that white has a clearly better game. Okay. Now you take the
Yes.
last pawn. Now everything is check, and knight c3. Okay. So now black gives check in h6, and now he can take back a few pawns, So you have queen g6 is the best move. Now if he takes immediately in h7 is more or less the same, but now he wants to give you a chance to activate against the bishop, So now if you take immediately in g7, he puts the bishop on the big diagonal, controls the diagonal g7 to b2, and he has some counterplay. It's more or less, it's better for white, of course, but it's not very clear. Not very clear yet. So, okay, rook g1 is the best move. So now he took in f3.
Is the best move rook g1 in order to activate the rook?
To activate the rook. You have time, if he takes there and he takes in h7, you have time to put the other rook in g1, and okay, white is clearly better, and there's a pawn up and clearly better position. So now after d6, you open the game and you try to show that his initiative is not strong enough, So now black has to to show that he still has some good game, here. So rook f8 is forced because otherwise it's much too dangerous, yeah.
The check.
Yeah. No, the idea was white tried to do immediately, rook d8 check, and you resign immediately. Now, if he has time to give one check in d8, is finished, because you have to move back the rook, and
Yes.
then he takes in f8. You take with the queen, is mate in g8. This is the idea.
Mate with
Mate,
the queen.
yes,
Here.
mate
Yes.
with the queen. So now this is the threat. So everything is forced. He has to go back in f8. Okay. Now, unfortunately, you don't have time to take in a6 because you lose the rook in g1. Well, knight d1. This is not bad, but it was clearly better here. Until here, I played very well, and probably it was much better to play immediately knight a4. After knight a4 instead of knight d1 was clearly better for white.
To come with the knight here.
Yeah, not in d1, but
Yes.
in a4, attacking immediately the pawn from c5, and it's much better for white. After white, knight d1 is all right, but it's a little bit passive, the knight d1. Okay, so this is very good because you open the position again. Our rooks will be very active, and later on we come again to c3, and the knight moves somewhere, and we have attacking chances, and finally we have very strong attack against the king,
Yeah.
Okay, so now we took back. Now we have 2 pawns up. He has to play something to see what happens, But the knight protects very well, the knight from d1. He doesn't have time to give 2 checks with the 2 rooks, If he has time to give 2 checks, then it's difficult enough. But now we have to move, and we protect the second line. This is very important. After rook f1, we had simply king g2, king c2, and we go somewhere with our king and we win. That is clear. So after rook e4, which is the best move, the very active one, rook c6 is alright. He tries to stop the pawn from h2, and now he gives you the possibility to move something. Rook d2 prepares the simple move knight c3. Later on, not immediately. King c2 and knight c3 later on. We will have 2 pawns and attack with the rook in d7. That would happen in our game later on. White is winning, but you have to play very precisely here, So king g7, knight c3. Okay, check, king c2. And now, what can he do? Well, if he takes his mate,
His mate.
His mate, or he loses the endgame, Every endgame with 2 pawns up for white is completely winning, And the king very near, The c pawn wins, all this position.
So if he takes
He
here
has to take, yes.
with a bishop,
Yeah.
you give a check,
We
right?
can give check or simply take in c3, because he doesn't have time to take back, If he takes in c3 or in c4, he gets mated. Or we trade the rooks, and later on we win the c pawn. And with the king very near, we win every endgame, It's very clear.
Okay.
So if we have time to go somewhere with the knight, every position is lost for black, So after check, king c2, well, it's a race. What can he do? But he tries to protect his king, but it's not. He has no time. Now it's very dangerous because he's mate, in every position. After rook a7, rook b7. Okay, the simplest threat is rook c8 mate. So
Yes.
he tries to give a check. No, we have to
Alright.
go somewhere. King b1, of course,
And he resigned here.
and he resigned. He has no moves. After, for instance, if now he plays king d8, probably the only move.
Yes.
King d8 is the only move, because after rook d2 or bishop f4 after rook d2, for instance.
Yes.
Rook d2.
Yes. Oh, it's okay.
Rook c8 check, rook d8, knight d6 check, and he resigns. Mate. Has to go to f8, and the rook takes d8 mate. First, So the 2 rooks, the give mate in every position. Well, the game was very interesting. Maybe some small mistakes somewhere, but very interesting. Very good game theoretically, after this game, it was very clear that white is better in all kind of positions. And later on, 2 years later, during the Olympic Games in Lugano, he tried to show that black has still another continuation which gives a little bit of counterplay. And he lost again in Lugano. And after these two games from Havana and from Lugano, the game was over, let's say, and nobody played this with black anymore for a long period of time, because it was clear that
This
white is
variation.
winning everywhere. Why? Because Grandmaster Gligoric was one of the leading grandmasters playing for black, the King's Indian, and he was very strong in King's Indian. And if he could lose like this two very important games, theoretically, it was clear that the variation was clearly better for white.
Yes,
So, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Very
you.
important. Yeah,
Yes.
very important game. And finally, that was my first victory against Grandmaster Gligoric during this one in Havana. Yeah, and later on, well, many others, but this one was very important one and very, and the first one very sweet,
Nice.
like this. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And the game, very good one, of course. Yeah.
True. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.